First question actually is the most common question submitted, and I suspect it came from a lot of our students. Every single day in this university, we do a form of small unit leadership. That's really what we do. We mentor, we teach, we coach, and I think you'd be pleasantly surprised if you mingled with them how many of them aspire to public service, how many of them want to be leaders. They yearn for that. And so many of them, I didn't count actually, but many of them have asked you for your mentorship. What advice would you give these young emerging leaders? What values to focus on, what traits? What would you say to them if you knew each of them individually?
Well, let me actually talk about perhaps the duties of a leader. I usually will cast this as the duties of a strategic leader, but the truth is that the duties of leadership at any level, and not just a commander, but the leader of a staff section, leader of an organization of any type, I think the duties are similar, and they are as follows. You have to try to get the big ideas right first and foremost, and the truth is that the surge in Iraq was not just a surge of forces, it was also, and more importantly, a surge of ideas. We changed the absolute approach that we were taking. We changed the big ideas. We focused, for example, on security of the population first and foremost, and recognized that you can only do that by living with the people. You can't commute to the fight. You have to be there with them, with your Iraqi counterparts. We fostered reconciliation. We promoted that. We supported the concept of living our values, of being first with the truth, a whole host of admonitions, if you will, that comprise the counterinsurgency guidance that I issued, and the big ideas, some of which literally announced in the very first day during my change of command remarks, and then echoed in a letter that I sent out to all our troopers. So again, first job, any organization, get the big ideas right. The second is, of course, having developed those ideas, you've got to try to educate the organization on them, typically by first educating the leaders immediately below you, but then getting those big ideas echoed and re-echoed throughout the breadth and depth of the organization, and ideally convincing people of their sheer wisdom and power so that they actually embrace them. And if the big ideas are right, you ought to be able to do that with 90 or 95% of the people, and the rest of them you can sort of bring along. So now you got the big ideas right, you got the organization and the leaders understanding them, believing them, realizing how to turn them into reality. And then, of course, you have to oversee the implementation of the big ideas. And you have to do that by going out and seeing for yourself, sharing risk and hardship when you're in this line of work. You know, the Sergeant Major Hill, great old 101st Airborne Division Sergeant Major, still reminds me periodically, you know, he says, soldiering is still an outdoor sport, sir. But so you got to get out and oversee the implementation. And then you have to capture best practices, worst practices, lessons that the institution needs to learn. And you then refine the big ideas on the basis of what you've seen out there, how you see it applied. You then transmit those to the leaders, oversee their implementation, and so forth. And so it's a continuous process. But I think, again, this is as true of someone who's leading a platoon of 30 soldiers, who may be leading a university organization, certainly leading the university itself. But again, I think at any level, those concepts are what describe what leaders have to do. Now, part of implementation, of course, is to get the very best people into place, to get the resources and all the rest. There's a host of other tasks and so on. And I congratulate you on the $1 billion plus, for example, in terms of resources that you have garnered for this great university. But that's, I think, again, for any leader at any level, those are the responsibilities. And it's about how you apply those at the appropriate level with an understanding of the circumstances in which you're taking action that are the key to success.
Well, sir, we have a wonderfully diverse audience of community leaders, many of our young students who will one day wear the uniform of the Republic, people from all varieties of walks of life. Leaders require the lead. So I wanted to take just a second up front and have you orient people to the central command. What is the concept of a combatant command,
sure.
The scope of CENTCOM, just so that people have a common perspective
sure.
of your area of responsibilities, and then we'll focus on some specific questions.
Yeah, that'd be great. Plus it also gives us a chance to exercise the the inalienable right, there's a First Amendment right, and, it's free speech is among those. There's a little asterisk on that, actually. And if you ever look down, the fine print's usually too small for most folks, but if you blow it up, it says in there that it is the inalienable right of every four-star Army general to use PowerPoint slides when communicating, when exercising his First Amendment rights. Let's talk about how we're going to go out and kill or capture these rocket teams and mortar teams that are making life so unbearable for all of our civilian partners and indeed for ourselves. And so again, there are times when that's something only we can do, and we can never shrink from that nor do that. And again, it's this preparation, if you will. You still have to do your core functions, but you have to do all of these other tasks as well. And that's why we need pentathlete leaders, and that's why we need these tremendously talented troopers that we have who have shown themselves so capable of innovative activities, independent action, initiative, as well as determination, courage, and just sheer excellence in their professional military skills. By the way, occasionally there's folks that say, oh, geez, these guys can't fight anymore because they're so busy helping with nation building. Don't tell that to our troopers. Don't tell that to the ones who killed or captured 77 rocket teams in Sadr City in a 3-week period. Now, we do it differently. We use unmanned aerial vehicles. We tie in all kinds of new technologies, the intelligence breakthroughs I mentioned, and so forth. We try not to just batter a place to save it. The reason we announced the Marja operation in Afghanistan way in advance was that so they'd know we're coming, and so they'd be out of the way if they didn't want to fight. We don't want to destroy Marja to save it. We wanted to take Marja as intact as we could, find the remaining insurgents in there, keep the population in there if we could, so we didn't have thousands and thousands of internally displaced persons in the middle of winter, and then secure it, and then help revive it, get the markets going again. By the way, almost all of them are open. The schools reopened, and again, all of the different basic services restored and then improved.
Sir, you actually touched on, and I'll go there. I hadn't planned on it yet, but I will. Once we have, using stability and support operations, we've cleared an area, we've established peace, there's schools, the normal things are happening again. What's your perspective on how we maintain that area for the safety of civilized society and not let terrorist networks re-infiltrate? What can we do after the fact, once we've cleaned out a pool, to keep it clear?
You have to employ population security measures. In Baghdad, that meant concrete. I mean, we had T-walls. We had these barriers that you literally have to shut off neighborhoods. You have to control access to the area. We employed ID cards in some cases that were so serious that you literally badged every single person who came in and out of a neighborhood. You get your intelligence going so that, again, you can keep going out after them, keep pushing them out further, literally clearing some areas in some cases. And then these 103,000 sons of Iraq, I mean, we had checkpoints everywhere out there. Now, that was a particularly brutal insurgency. Don't forget how bad Iraq was. There's a little bit of looking back now and saying, geez, that wasn't so tough after all. Of course it was going to succeed. I mean, that wasn't the sense I had at that time when I was sent off to do that, nor, frankly, in some of my returns to Washington. But anyway, I mean, let me show you, actually. Give me the security incidents for Iraq, because it's worth remembering that in December 2006, there were 53 dead bodies every 24 hours in Baghdad alone from sectarian violence. By the way, that was just sectarian violence. There are some other forms of violence as well. This shows security incidents by week, and you can see how high this reached. I mean, this is some 1,800 security incidents in a certain week. Now, in terms of daily attacks, that actually, real attacks, not just found and cleared IEDs, which are part of this as well, we had some 220 or more attacks per day, 220. Now, in the most recent months here, really for about the last 6 months or so, it's been under 20 attacks per week, each week. And in many weeks, it's been below 15 attacks per day in those weeks on average.